Hello, everyone. I'm Storm Team Chief Meteorologist Jim Teske. We thank you for tuning in to Teske's Tidbits this evening. A couple of things that we'll be doing tonight, just going over some information as we've passed the midpoint in October. We're taping this particular part of the segment on the 16th of October. And then going to have an interesting conversation with the director of the Central Sierra Snow Laboratory, located 7,000 feet up in the Sierra Nevadas near Lake Tahoe. You think they get a lot of snow in the Tug Hill. Wait till you hear some of the stories about the snow there. I think you'll find that discussion very interesting as well. But that's coming up in the next segment. I want to focus a little bit on October numbers. And again, remember, we're taping this on the 16th, so some of these numbers have probably changed since we record this. But the big story remains the lack of rainfall. We've had some rain through the middle of the month. We've had an inch of rain in Syracuse, but that was still more than 0.8 of an inch below normal. So even though your lawn may look a little bit green, we're still hurting in terms of precipitation, and the drought continues. These numbers are as of again the end of the 16th of October. And notice on this particular graphic, there's severe drought from northern Jefferson County into northern St. Lawrence County, and also a large chunk of western New York. Here in central New York, it's generally moderate to abnormally dry conditions. And, as we've mentioned on the air, it would take a good 5.5 to 7.5 inches of rain to really alleviate those conditions. So, we still have a long way to go, even if we get a day where we get an inch of rain. Yeah, it helps, but we need much more than that. So that's what's going on as far as the dry weather is concerned. And temperature-wise, just to give you perspective on where we are, again, this is through the 16th. We've had a cool stretch, but remember earlier in the month, we had those 80-degree days, and that really, that's the reason why halfway through the month we're running, roughly 2.5 degrees above normal. By the time you see this, we will have had some milder weather on the weekend of the 18th and 19th. So we are definitely headed toward what would appear to be another above normal month. The 8 to 14 day forecast shows that temperatures will probably be above normal. The greatest chance still appears to be over portions of the northern plains, but some of that mild air spills to the east. So that's one of the reasons I think we're likely going to be looking at another month with temperatures above normal for this time of year. So that's the first part of the show. And when we come back again, we're going to talk a little bit more about snow in the Sierra Nevadas. So stay tuned for that. Welcome back, everyone. I'm Storm Team Chief Meteorologist Jim Teske, and we're going to get into a little discussion about snow here. We know in central New York, upstate New York, snow is a big issue. The Tug Hill, obviously, copious amounts of snow. But we're going to talk to a place that even gets more snow at times than the Tug Hill Plateau. And for that, we are going to bring in the director of the Central Sierra Snow Laboratory, Dr. Andrew Schwartz. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Jim. Excited to talk about some of that nice cold precipitation we get.
That's right. We're getting to that time of the year. And first off, I think most people aren't really familiar with the Sierra Snow Lab. Tell us a little bit about that. I mean, where it's located and what's the mission?
Yeah, so we're located just north of Lake Tahoe, northwest of Lake Tahoe by a little bit. In the Sierra Nevada mountains here in California. And we've been up here since 1946, and we've researched all kinds of different things regarding weather, water, and climate, of course, specifically focusing on snow. So we've been really trying to engage initially on how to understand snow, its processes, and now in recent years, we're trying to understand how to better manage the water that's coming out of it, as well as modeling things like our snowmelt times and ensuring that we're measuring it and monitoring it correctly as well.
I was going to ask a little bit about the record. I mean, the lab itself goes back to 1946, but correct me if I'm wrong, the observations there go back even farther, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So we, as far as we're aware at least, have the longest observation record of snowfall and snow depth in the world. So each of these records has been taken each year going all the way back to 1878. And the reason why is that we had the Transcontinental Railroad come over Donner Summit here a few decades prior to that. And the railroad, of course, wanted to make sure that it was running efficiently. So they started really paying attention to the storms that were coming in and those measurements. So we have records from 1878 all the way up to present of those two variables.
So very robust record there. Now, give us kind of the basics. What agencies do you work with? I mean, you work out of University of California, Berkeley, but is it an educational laboratory, or are you involved with the government? I mean, how does it work?
It's kind of a little bit of everything. So initially, this place was started with the Weather Bureau, which is now the National Weather Service, and the Army Corps of Engineers. Post World War II, they kind of had this moment where they went, wait, we don't know as much about snow as we need to for a number of reasons. And so this lab was one of three created, with another one in Oregon and another one up in Montana, to study that. Now we're the last lab standing, but our collaborators are kind of all over the place. So we do some educational work. As you mentioned, we're managed by UC Berkeley. So we do have regular courses that come up here. We hold our own snow science classes, but we do a lot of research with folks like the California Department of Water Resources. We work with the NASA Jet Propulsion Laboratory on a project, the California Energy Commission. We do still have a lot of collaboration with NOAA and the National Weather Service. So, realistically, just about anybody that's interested in snow and how we can learn more about it is somebody that we want to talk to.
And talk about measuring the snow, because when I tell weather watchers here, what do you need to measure the snow? I tell them as long as you got a ruler, in a flat spot away from, drifting snow, you've got a place to measure. I mean, you get really high tech in terms of measuring not only the amount of snow, but the amount of water in the snow, correct?
Absolutely. Yeah. This is always one of the really fun things for me to talk about because, we have this really high-tech technology, that we've been using for a relatively short while. So we have something called P-band radar that we're still investigating to determine if it can measure the amount of water in the snow, because that's the crucial part, right? Like, I love to ski, but at the end of the day, we want to know how much water's in it. So we have something that we're testing. That's the project that I mentioned earlier with NASA, this P-band radar that's kind of high-tech. There's another piece of technology called a neutron sensor that picks up background radiation from the cosmos, basically. And by calculating how much lower that is under the snow than above it, we can get how much water is in it again. But you mentioned at the beginning a ruler. Believe it or not, our most sought-after measurements here still at the lab are when we go out in each storm, 8 a.m. and 4 p.m. each day, and we go out to our interval board, which is just a board that sits on top of the snowpack, and we jam our ruler in 4 spots, and we average those spots out. And then we take a sample of that snow with a little hollow plastic tube and weigh it to get the amount of water content in it. And that is still realistically the most sought after measurement that we make. So it's something that anybody can do in their backyard, but is still incredibly important to science.
So with the things that you talk about that you're looking into to measure the amount of moisture in the snow, is it a matter of it being more accurate than just getting a core sample, or just convenience? What are the main reasons for doing it now, trying to do it this new way?
Yeah, there's a number of convenience factors here that are at play. You know, a lot of the places that we're needing to measure snow are in places like national parks or wilderness, where permitting is intense and trying to get sites out there is kind of complicated. But also, you know, we don't want to blemish the landscape, and a lot of our prior technologies kind of look funky out there compared to these beautiful areas. And additionally, some of the older technologies, for instance, bears like to attack them because they're filled with antifreeze. There's something we call a snow pillow, which is two pieces of metal with propylene glycol in between it, which is just a really basic sugar. They put it in food all the time. But bears have found out that they can rip those open and drink it. And so then maintenance becomes an issue.
So you're trying to find something that's bear-proof, essentially, is what you're trying to do.
Exactly. Bear-proof, human-proof, nature-proof. And that's why we're moving on to this next generation, is to try to get away from some of those maintenance issues we've encountered in the past.
Okay. And I mean, it all comes down to the fact that the snowpack where you are and throughout the Sierras is very important in California. You know, here, you know, obviously snow melt in the winter is good. It's helpful for the streams and everything. But for California, it's really critical, that snowpack and what happens to it in the spring.
Absolutely, yeah. So here in California, we get roughly 30 to 50% of our water annually from snowpack. The earlier number on that 30% is mainly surface water. And believe it or not, we still don't have a strong handle on how much groundwater recharge is done by snow. So we're still trying to work that out, but it could be as high as 50% in terms of how much water we get. Throughout the Western U.S., snow melt provides up to 70% of the water that we have to use for agriculture and our daily uses as humans, and these various other things like our ecosystem health. And so it is a vital resource that we have to really keep track of and make sure sticks around for us.
Yeah, for us here in the East, it's a very foreign type of thing to talk about because our precipitation is so spread out. I mean, we're here in Syracuse, for example, we're lucky that the average precipitation / rainfall in a given month is roughly between 3 or 4 inches every month. And for you have a dry season, you have a wet season. So that makes it that much more critical.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's out here, it's wild just how different the dry and wet seasons are. We average about 30 inches of precipitation annually. That comes in about 6 months. Sometimes we can get 9 to 12 inches of that in a single storm. So realistically speaking, from June until September every year, generally, we may only get at most 1/4 of an inch. This year's been a little bit wetter than normal, but there's definitely that sharp gradient between the dry and wet seasons.
Yeah. At this point, Andrew, we're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we'll talk a little bit more about, you know, the storms that you get your snow from and how it differs from snow here in the East. So if you can bear with us here, we'll be back to do a little bit more of the interview.
Absolutely.
Welcome back. I'm Storm Team Chief Meteorologist Jim Teske, and we've been talking about western snow, specifically out in the Sierra Nevadas, and we're bringing back in Dr. Andrew Schwartz. He's a director of the Central Sierra Snow Laboratory there. And Andrew, this part, let's talk a little bit about the difference of how you get snow versus how we get snow here in central New York and upstate New York as well. And here it's all about nor'easters, lake effect snow. But for you, your source of snow is a little bit different. Describe that to us here in the East.
Yeah, so we get what are known as atmospheric rivers. And atmospheric rivers, realistically, are when a regular low pressure system kind of reaches down and taps into the moisture that's around the equator. So that moisture is then grabbed and kind of flung around that low pressure system up and towards the west coast of the United States or various other countries around the world, actually. But we get these atmospheric rivers that can give us ridiculous amounts of snow in very short periods. So we can have winds up to 200 miles an hour. We can occasionally get these storms that'll last for 3 days and give us up to 12 feet of snow in some areas. And so they are just really intense, powerful storms. Some people kind of refer to them as, West Coast hurricanes in a way, because of their intensity.
Yeah, and I just want this to sink in for people because it's not uncommon to have a lot of snow from lake effect. We had one storm last year that dropped 100 inches of snow in 8 or 9 days in several communities north of Syracuse. And just to make sure that I got that straight, you said 11 to 12 feet in a matter of a couple of days. It's a heavy wet snow, correct?
It is a very heavy snow, yeah. So these systems, because they're warm and they're tapping into that moisture from the tropics, it's a very heavy and dense snow. It's what we call Sierra cement. So, I grew up in Colorado with light, powdery, fluffy snow, kind of similar to, I think, what you folks get a lot of the time. And it was an adjustment for sure, getting used to that really dense stuff out here.
Tell us a little bit about some of the bigger winters that you've had there, because in our lake effect areas, 300 inches is fairly common in a good winter, maybe close to 400 inches. What are some of the big winters that you've measured there?
Yeah, so our biggest winter was the winter of 1951, 1952, and we got about 68.3 feet of snowfall, which was far and away the biggest winter we had ever seen. And then a couple years ago, number 2 came in. So the winter of 22, 23, we ended up getting about 63 feet of snow here at the lab, which is a little over double what we normally get. We normally get about 30 feet overall, 360 inches. So I think if I recall correctly, we got 754 inches that year. It was wildly large. And definitely put a kink in a lot of people's backs as they were trying to shovel that snow.
And, for example, that winter, did the snow totally melt, or were in the summer, or was there patches under trees and stuff like that kind of hung out all winter or all summer?
In those big years, we have it hang out all summer. And, the recreation community loves that. There's a lot of people with that bucket list item of trying to ski in every month, especially in their local areas. And so, yeah, we had snow from that winter that lasted right on through to the next winter, almost kind of starting a fresh winter with a glacier in a way, if you can imagine it. But generally speaking, we melt out completely up here, and then we have a quite a dry period of year before going into our wet season again.
And when you're talking about the seasonal totals and everything, at peak, about how much snow? What would be your peak snow depth? I mean, what do you normally see during a winter for that?
Yeah, so our maximum snow depths here in the Sierra peak generally around mid-March to mid-April, and the biggest year that we've seen here at the lab was 20.1 feet. So that snow compresses quite a bit, right? We're talking about getting 63, 68 feet, but it does compress quite a bit once it's on the ground. And it's hard to visualize what 20 plus feet of snow is, but if you can imagine walking into the second floor window at your house, potentially third floor with, the drifting that occurs, that's where we're at a lot of the time up here.
And for perspective, I mean, you're at the site right now. You're 7,000 feet or so. I would assume your building's got to be at least 3 stories high.
Yeah, so we have what we call, it's kind of a walkout or basement level where we have some various facilities, wet lab, electrical lab, things like that. The main floor where I'm at, this is the second floor. And this gets covered up generally by January, February, depending on the year. And we have to put plywood on the windows so the snowpack does not shatter them. So it gets dark in here. 2 years ago, we had to take vitamin D pills because we weren't getting enough sunlight. And that same year was the year that we were having to regularly walk into the third floor window, which is our bathroom window, so that we could access the facility.
So from this interview, I get the sense that you're a big snow fan. All the meteorologists here on staff, we're all big snow fans. But there's always a breaking point. I think here in central New York, once we get to mid-March, even the diehards, the skiers are like ready to move on. Do you ever get tired of snow?
Oddly enough, yes. A lot of it depends on the winter. Some of the winters we have are just back to back to back with storms, and it seems like there's never a break to actually enjoy it. And those winters are kind of the ones where we need a break after a while. 2 years ago in that big winter, we shoveled roughly 330,000 pounds of snow.
Oh, that's a backbreaker.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we were shoveling 2 to 3 hours every day to try to keep the facility clear and to keep things running. And so at that point, once we got to April, we were like, all right, we're done with this. Let's get some sunlight out. Let's go mountain biking.
Do you have, here people have heavy duty snow blowers and do you have special equipment to get like out of the building you're in?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, most of what we do up here, because this building is up an unplowed road, it's hand cleared. We do have a snowblower for the parking lot, and then we also pay some people to clear our lot with the bigger storms because they have the big bobcats with the big rotary blowers on them. But most of the time, believe it or not, it's just a shovel doing the work to keep the lab free of snow.
Just the old-fashioned shovel. That does the trick, I guess. Andrew, I'm glad we had a chance to chat. You've got a lovely, beautiful, looks like fall day behind you, but before you know it, the snow is going to be falling. We wish you all the best this season. Hopefully it doesn't get up to the third floor, snow-wise, for you. But thank you for taking a little time to talk snow with us today.
Jim, absolutely my pleasure. Thank you for having me on.
Welcome back to Teske's Tidbits here as we kind of wrap things up. We hope you found that interview with Andrew Schwartz, Dr. Andrew Schwartz, interesting about the snow that falls in the Sierra Nevadas. Maybe we'll check back with him later in the season just to see how much snow they've gotten and whether you can see out that second story window. So that's going to wrap it up for this edition of Teske's Tidbits. We've got more coming up as we head into the month of November. Of course, we'll probably go into a deeper dive in terms of the winter outlook. So you want to stay tuned for that. That'll be coming up during the month of November as well. So we hope you have a great evening, and we'll talk to you soon.